Of course, what you're trying to do with the appointment-making call is get a first meeting. And the first meeting, you're right in your skill set then, but there's certainly some things that top-performing sales guys do particularly well and particularly often in terms of the first meeting. First meeting's about two things most often, and done well, these things are really worth focusing on. First thing's about building rapport. We talked earlier about the fact that decisions are made for political and personal reasons, and it makes rapport a very important thing to try and build. I don't think I mean trying to be friends with the client. I've got a lot of clients who really I have little in common with, and they have little in common with me, and we know it. But we have built some common ground of respect, and we've done that by effectively building rapport together. So this is not about looking around the client's office and commenting on their fine selection of yachting photographs and how delightful their wife looks. It's not about that. It's interesting to know, but I'm not sure I've met an executive in North America who doesn't have yachting, golfing, children, and wife on their desk. So you're hardly having a unique conversation with them. This is about body language, eye contact, and an apparent and obvious desire to understand what's important to them. And therefore it's reflected in the questions you ask, not the statements you make about how attractive the beach veneer on their desk is. It's important that you get a couple of key open questions that help you just drive a level of conversation with someone. And you choose not to dive to business too quickly or to stay and do the interpersonal stuff too much either. It's about understanding them. The question I like to use is a really simple one. I always start a meeting by just asking them what they'd like to get out of it. It's important for me because it at least gives me a sense of their stance and their position. They can tell me whether they want to get straight to business. They can illustrate for me how they're feeling. And it allows me to bridge to some of my other questioning. In terms of the engagement itself, there are no hard and fast rules, no right and wrong, but there are some pointers that you can take that help you be as effective as possible. We found that older executives do tend to prefer a salutation used as opposed to their first name when you first engage with them. It gives them the right to empower you, and it's about respect. Younger executives, though, I don't tend to use the same rule. I'll happily use first names, and there's a reason for that. In the relationships we're building, too much reverence, too much fear perceived on our part, too much salesman-like behavior on our part creates the wrong kind of bond. What we're trying to create here is as near a peer relationship as possible based on the value we may be able to bring. We all know we're not real peers. They know we're a salesperson. But this is about credibility, bondability, gravitas, and an ability to deal with each other as close as possible as peers. So think of that when you're engaging. You don't have to thank them for their time 6 separate times. Once is okay. And don't forget, you've given some of your time too to this conversation. So be careful with that. Think about what you say and what you ask, and not just what you get from it, but what it communicates about you. And what we're trying to communicate is a business relationship based on equal exchange of value. You'll create value for the company, and they will pay you to create the value. And so just think about that as you sit and engage with the client. Keep your eye contact strong. Keep your body language strong and positive. Don't close off too much. Don't cross your arms too much. Simple stuff. But there's no right or wrong. Keep it business-like and keep it professional. And think to yourself at all times, how do I best engage this individual at a near-peer relationship so that I can continue to contribute value? Purpose of the first meeting is clear. We see no variance from this amongst high-performing sales guys. Purpose of the first meeting is to ask questions. Remember this, if you position this meeting as a I would like to understand your business kind of meeting, chances are you're not going to get the meeting. If you communicate that this meeting is to discover whether the value you've created elsewhere is applicable here, then there's some mutual exchange of value and it's okay. But make no bones about it. You're the doctor here. You're diagnosing, you're not prescribing. This is about understanding the client's needs, the client's priorities, what's important to them. So structure the meeting accordingly. But don't forget that there's some control required for this meeting, and it's a two-way interaction. We're told to use an agenda at the start of meetings. I buy into that. For me, it's a control mechanism. The prospect of laying out an agenda that says, we're going to spend some time uncovering some information about you and discovering what's important to you. Then we're going to spend some time positioning how we may be able to help in the context of those requirements. And then we may carry out and agree some action plans and action points. For me, is a really useful way of being able to look the client in the eye and saying, do you want to add anything? Do you like the agenda? If we get there, are you going to buy in? And it gives me a chance to begin closing before we even start the meeting, in the subtlest way possible. So think through the agenda to the extent that it positions credibly an opportunity to control the engagement.